So that was Thief. We've come back to the more congenial setting of the clock tower in order to talk about the game for a little bit. I thought it was less noisy and a bit more pleasant looking than the credit screen. Sorry to all the talented people that worked on the game, but fuck you. What I want to do just really quickly is breeze through 2 or 3 points I have after completing the game. I generally, when I do a Let's Play, I do not comment excessively. At least I hope I don't. I don't comment excessively on what I think of the game, except when it's really in the front of my mind, because I'm not a game reviewer. I just enjoy playing games. I generally don't stress too much out over the art style or the mechanics or whatever. You know, if it's fun, it's fun. If it has a good story, it has a good story. I just like to enjoy the games. However, I've been a fan of the Thief series for a very long time, so I feel like I should say something at the end of this. First of all, the ending. Let's talk about that for a minute. It actually was abrupt, let's be honest, but it was also quite self-explanatory, I thought. I mean, I've seen a lot of people bitching about it on forums and stuff. Fairly self-explanatory. You can see the footprints, the sort of wet footprints walking away beside the claw stuck in the post, which means that Erin clearly did survive, which ties up some sort of loose end with the story, I guess. Very contrived the way, you know, she ended up hanging off the thing again and he had to throw her the claw. Total simulacrum, if you like, of the beginning of the game. So that was a bit contrived. However, the ending, at least, it tackles some of the main stuff in the story. You know, Orion gets his, the Baron gets his, all the nasty people get theirs, and the two sort of half-decent characters are left alive at the end of it. It's one type of way to end the story, I suppose. What it didn't do, though, was it didn't explain any of the aftermath or what happened. I mean, like, what about all the other characters? What's going on with them? So, at the end of the story, as evil as they were, or as misguided as they were, the two main vestiges of authority in the city have been violently expunged. They're gone. So what's going to happen to the rest of the citizens? Who do they look to? You know, that wasn't explained at all. And on top of that, if the gloom was as bad as it was being made out that it was, are half the population of the city dead? How does it recover from that? You know, massive epidemic, no real... Okay, the cause of the gloom has stopped, it'll subside, but what about all the people that didn't make it? So, I mean, those were some of the issues I had with the ending, which could have been better, could have explained a lot more about some of the things that were left unsaid in the game and unanswered. I have to be honest though, I really enjoyed the game for the most part, especially, I guess, from a gameplay and a mechanical perspective. I love stealth games anyway, so I was always bound to enjoy this, I guess. I felt like it certainly was an action stealth game, I'd classify it as, with some of the running segments and things like that. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I had a little problem with some of the gameplay mechanics, like the swooping thing I thought was a bit daft. They didn't need that in there. And some of the levels I thought were designed in a manner that you really had to sort of play them through first and fail miserably in some sections before you could actually stealth it properly. That's quite counterintuitive, really. Yeah, so overall, gameplay I thought was very good. Few little problems with it, in my opinion. Few mechanical problems or dodgy decisions gameplay-wise. But overall, excellent. Really good. Story, though, I think that's what let down the game a lot more than the gameplay. I think early on there were a lot of themes that were brought up that could have been dealt with a hell of a lot better. This whole sort of religion versus technology thing. The idea of class warfare or, you know, socio-economic conflict boiling over into violence. You know, those were all broached very early on, but they weren't explored very well. Some of the background settings in the game had people giving diatribes and things like that, but it was few and far between, and I don't think it was well executed either. There was always, like, you know, one character screaming his head off, or when the Graven took over, they would hang people in the same way that the Watch did, so there was this sort of clear message coming through that everyone's a bastard, everyone's as bad as each other, and that's kind of hackneyed, I think. You know, mob rule is bad, I get it. And as well as that, I feel like some of the level design, you know, that was tied in with the story, like the Asylum in particular is the best example of this, were just sort of built up deliberately in order to shock people. It was as if they were trying to outdo Shieldbridge Cradle from Thief 3 with the Asylum. I think that's exactly what they were going for, in fact. And to compromise the story or build the story around that is not ideal. And as well as that, the level wasn't even as good as Shieldbridge Cradle in my opinion anyway, so I mean they failed there on both counts. And characters is one of the things that I really had a problem with. I guess the Thief Taker General is going to be the prime example of that. But I think all the characters overall, I had a hard time empathizing with them. Some of them were really one-dimensional. Thief Taker General, definitely. Erin, I think, was quite poorly characterized as well. I found it very hard to empathize with her, even though the game kind of went out of its way to say, oh, she's, been abused as a, well, not abused, but had a rough childhood, had a hard time nearly becoming a prostitute. That sort of stuff. That sort of stuff is supposed to be compelling, and there are games with stories like that, films with stories like that, which really tug at you. But this time, I don't know. It didn't click for me anyway. But of course, the Thief Taker was disgustingly poor. It's just a silent movie villain that turned up pure evil, liked to twiddle his mustache and whistle a jaunty tune, had a limp. It's 2014. I know you're marketing this to a mass audience, but you don't have to compromise on story. For the love of God, he was awful. Having said that, though, I think that the story was better earlier on in the game than later. I think the further the game went, especially around Chapter 5, was that the Asylum? I think Chapter 5, anyway, that's where events started to really speed up. And there was less and less exposition and less explanation, and that got frustrating. So earlier on I could have... in fact, I was definitely overlooking some problems I think the game's story had, and some things that weren't being explored adequately in the story. But the further it went on, the worse it got, and the more noticeable it got. And finally, because I really don't want to rabbit on here, nobody wants to hear this, even if I want to say it. But in terms of this as a Thief game, even though it's a reboot, it's still part of the Thief series. I feel like I have to talk about that, because I've been a fan of the Thief series for the longest time. I still play Thief 3 fairly regularly, and every now and again I will go back and play Thief 1 and Thief 2. And I don't understand why they rebooted the series. And I'm not saying that just because I like Thief. I'm saying that because I think with all the story problems the game had, I don't understand why they didn't just build upon existing lore. Because in my opinion anyway, the Thief games have a compelling lore already. And the game makers clearly knew that, because they were pulling left and right bits of the existing Thief lore and just plonking it in. Here and there, the fact that the keepers, the cathedrals, all of this sort of stuff, some of the character names even, things as little as that, which in one sense you can look at that as fan service, but I actually think they went beyond that with a lot of what they did. They were basically ripping wholesale elements of previous Thief games, and especially, level design. Again, as I've said, the Asylum was basically Shieldbridge Cradle version 2.0, and it was a worse Shieldbridge Cradle. It was nowhere near as good. And as well as that, Thief Taker General was basically through it with a limp. So overall, as a big Thief fan, I'm kind of disappointed with this as a Thief game. I don't think it went in the right direction. But then I think any attempt to update the series and mass market it and put it on consoles and things like that, it was never going to be conducive to the core experience of Thief, which is pretty brutal stealth sometimes, in-depth stealth gameplay, very little action sometimes, a lot of waiting, a lot of planning on the fly, things like that, which this game didn't really have. This game was far more procedural than that. I definitely don't want to end on a downer though. I really enjoyed this game in a lot of ways. This is just kind of me giving you my thoughts at the end of it about where I thought the good points were, where I thought the flaws were, where it could have been better, what I was disappointed in, and what I liked. And there was a lot I liked about it. But again, gameplay is a very wide umbrella. To say I like the gameplay takes only one sentence, but that's basically the essence of the game. If the game had a brilliant story but awful gameplay, I wouldn't want to play it. So there's a lot to be said for this game. I really enjoyed it. But having said that, and given the traditional sort of compliment sandwich that you're supposed to do, something good, something terrible, and then something good again, I will be doing a lot more stealth on this channel, but we're going to be doing more traditional stealth, I think, from now on, or certainly in the coming future we'll be doing more traditional stealth. Specifically, we're going to be doing a few more playthroughs of Missions on the Dark mod, which if you've not heard of that, is a game rooted in the gameplay and not so much the story, but in, I think, the ethos of Thief. It has a lot of very stylistic similarities, but the stealth in it is just incredible. And it's not a mod anymore, but it's a full release sort of free game, I guess, that I really enjoy. So we'll be doing more of that. If you like stealth, if you like this sort of gameplay, but kicked up a notch to where it really should be, then watch out for that in the next few weeks. I'll be doing some playthroughs of that. I guess that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. It wasn't the most popular series ever, but for those of you who did watch it all the way through, I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly had a lot of fun playing it. And that's it, I guess. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.